Meet Sarah, a devoted wife living in a luxurious mansion with her husband Reuben, a billionaire whose wealth brought unexpected challenges to their once happy marriage. Their son, Francis, looks up to his father, but Reuben's reckless lifestyle begins to tear the family apart. Tensions escalate when $10,000 goes missing, leading to shocking revelations that will change their lives forever. Stay stunned, for you won't believe what happens next. But if this is your first time here, kindly subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our next upload. Now let's dive into the full story. Sarah's life seemed perfect when she married Reuben, a kind and ambitious man who worked tirelessly to provide for their future. Their modest beginnings were filled with love and laughter, but everything changed after Reuben's meteoric rise to wealth. The once humble man now lived in luxury, surrounded by gleaming cars, sprawling estates, and a lifestyle that drew the attention of everyone around them. The mansion they now called home was a testament to their success, a palace of glass and marble, with golden chandeliers casting a warm glow across its opulent halls. At first, Sarah was proud of Reuben's accomplishments, but as the days turned into months, she began to feel like an outsider in her own home. Reuben's growing circle of friends thrived on extravagant parties, expensive drinks, and endless entertainment. He often left the house in the early hours of the evening and returned long after Sarah had prepared his favorite meals. On most nights, she sat alone at the dinner table, her gaze lingering on the untouched plates of food. One evening, as the grandfather clock in the corner struck midnight, Reuben arrived home, his face flushed from too many drinks. He barely acknowledged Sarah, who had waited for him in the grand living room. She looked up from the sofa, where she sat with her hands folded tightly on her lap, her expression a mix of worry and frustration. "I made dinner hours ago," Sarah said, her voice quiet but heavy with emotion. "You didn't even call to say you'd be late." Reuben waved her off, slumping into a leather armchair. The smell of expensive whiskey lingered in the air. "I wasn't hungry. Besides, I had a lot to do." "Don't make a big deal out of it, Sarah." Her chest tightened as she watched the man she once adored transform into someone she could hardly recognize. "This isn't the first time, Reuben. You've been coming home late night after night. I hardly see you anymore." Reuben leaned back, his head tilted lazily against the chair. "I'm building a life for us, Sarah. Isn't that what you wanted? A beautiful home, security, and a future for Francis." Sarah's frustration bubbled over. "A future for Francis? You barely spend time with him. And what about me? Do I even matter to you anymore?" For a moment, Reuben's eyes flickered with guilt, but it was quickly replaced by annoyance. "Stop overthinking everything. I'm doing this for you, for our family. Can't you just be happy?" Silence filled the room as Sarah looked away, tears pooling in her eyes. She didn't want to fight, but she couldn't ignore the growing distance between them. The man who once held her hand through every hardship now seemed like a stranger. Reuben, noticing her tears, softened his tone. "Look, I'll try to come home earlier, okay? But you need to understand, I've got responsibilities. People depend on me." Sarah nodded faintly, though her heart remained heavy. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she knew their marriage was teetering on the edge of something fragile. The next morning, Reuben's mood was remarkably different. He greeted Sarah with a warm smile, acting as though nothing had happened the night before. When she asked if he remembered their conversation, he brushed it off, claiming he must have been too tired to think clearly. His dismissive attitude stung, but Sarah chose to stay silent, hoping things would improve. However, the pattern continued. Reuben's late nights became more frequent, and his behavior more erratic. On some occasions, he refused to eat the meals Sarah prepared, muttering hurtful comments about her cooking. Other times, he acted as if he hadn't said a word, apologizing sweetly in the mornings and praising her culinary skills. The contradictions in his actions left Sarah confused and deeply hurt. Francis, their 14-year-old son, began noticing the tension between his parents. He often lingered at the dinner table, trying to make conversation, but the unease in the house was impossible to ignore. Sarah worried about the impact Reuben's behavior might have on their son, but every time she brought it up, Reuben dismissed her concerns with a laugh. "Francis is fine," Reuben would say. "He's a smart kid. Don't stress over nothing." Sarah wasn't so sure. The cracks in their family were growing wider, and she feared it was only a matter of time before something shattered completely. One afternoon, Sarah returned home early from work. The mansion was unusually quiet, with only the faint hum of the central air conditioning filling the vast space. As she moved through the house, she felt a strange sense of unease. Calling out for Francis yielded no response. Eventually, she found him sprawled on the plush living room carpet, his face flushed and his limbs limp. Panic gripped her as she rushed to his side, shaking him gently. Her heart pounded as she noticed a bottle of alcohol lying nearby, its contents half finished. "Francis," she cried, her voice trembling. "What's happened to you?" Her mind raced, initially fearing he was ill, but the smell of the alcohol was unmistakable. Relief mixed with shock as she realized he wasn't sick but drunk. She managed to lift him, guiding him to his bedroom. As he slept off the effects, Sarah sat beside him, her thoughts in turmoil. When Francis woke up hours later, Sarah demanded answers. "Francis, when did you start drinking? Who gave you that bottle?" Francis looked away, his voice shaky. "I wasn't drinking, Mom. I was just tired and resting. It wasn't alcohol. It was just water." The blatant denial stunned Sarah. She knew what she had seen but couldn't understand why her son would lie. Frustrated and worried, she resolved to confront Reuben when he came home. That evening, when Reuben arrived, Sarah recounted what had happened. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he called Francis over and asked him the same question. To Sarah's disbelief, Francis repeated his story, insisting he hadn't been drinking. Reuben seemed to accept his son's words, brushing off Sarah's concerns. "You're overreacting, Sarah," he said dismissively. "Francis is just a kid. He probably found an empty bottle and thought it was funny to play with." But Sarah wasn't convinced. Something deeper was happening in their home, and she needed to find out what it was. Weeks later, a new crisis erupted. Reuben stormed into the house one evening, his face red with fury. He announced that $10,000 had gone missing from his study. His voice echoed through the mansion as he demanded answers, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "Francis," Reuben bellowed, "get down here right now." The boy appeared hesitantly, his face pale. Reuben wasted no time, accusing him of taking the money. Francis vehemently denied it, his voice quivering. "I didn't take it, Dad. I swear." Reuben's anger flared. He grabbed a belt and lashed out, his frustration blinding him to Francis's cries of pain. Sarah intervened, shielding her son and shouting for Reuben to stop. "This is madness," she yelled. "Francis said he didn't do it. Why can't you believe him?" Reuben turned his anger toward Sarah. "If he didn't take it, then who did? You. Is that it, Sarah? Are you hiding it?" His accusation hit her like a blow. She stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "How dare you accuse me of stealing? I've never touched your money." But Reuben refused to listen. He stormed out of the room, leaving Sarah and Francis shaken and distraught. The tension in the house reached unbearable levels. Reuben became increasingly distant, avoiding Sarah and Francis altogether. Desperate to prove her innocence, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. She had security cameras discreetly installed in key areas of the house, including Reuben's study. Meanwhile, Reuben's behavior became more erratic. He continued blaming Sarah for the missing money, using her silence as proof of guilt. The lavish lifestyle he once showered on his family now felt like a burden. He grew colder, hardly speaking to Sarah unless it was to accuse her, and Francis avoided him altogether. One evening, Sarah sat Francis down for a heart-to-heart conversation. "Francis, I need you to be honest with me," she said gently. "This situation is tearing us apart. Did you take your father's money? Francis shook his head, tears welling up in his eyes. No, Mum, I didn't take it. I don't know why Dad won't believe me. Sarah hugged her son tightly, her heart aching for him. Francis, say the truth, and I will get you through this. But Francis kept saying he is not the one. That same week, Reuben threw a small gathering for his friends, insisting on flaunting his wealth despite the turmoil at home. Sarah reluctantly played the dutiful wife, preparing meals and ensuring everything was in place. She observed Reuben's interactions with his friends and noticed their subtle manipulations. One of them, a loud and brash man named Jake, leaned in and said, "Reuben, you've got to be careful. Women love money, but they'll stab you in the back when you least expect it." Reuben nodded, a bitter smile on his lips. "Don't I know it?" Those words from Reuben's friends got Sarah, and she decided to sit the whole week with the camera footage, and to her surprise, one evening, while Reuben was puzzling with his heavy drink, he held a bundle of cash in his hands, his movements clumsy and erratic. To his unconscious, he opened an old trunk in the corner and shoved the money inside before staggering out of the room. Sarah said, "So Reuben had hidden the money himself, too drunk to remember, and is blaming us, calling me a theft. Unbelievable." She rummaged through the drawers and cabinets, her heart pounding. In a corner, she found an old trunk that seemed out of place amidst the room's modern furnishings. She opened it cautiously and gasped. Inside the trunk lay a bundle of cash, wrapped neatly in an envelope. It was Reuben's missing $10,000. Sarah's mind raced as she pieced together the events of that night. Reuben, in his drunken stupor, must have hidden the money without remembering. Tears of relief and frustration streamed down her face. She had endured weeks of accusations, humiliation, and emotional pain for something Reuben had done himself. But Sarah knew she couldn't confront him immediately. She needed a plan to expose the truth in a way that would make him see the damage he had caused. The following morning, Sarah remained quiet about her discovery, waiting for the right moment. Reuben continued his cold demeanor, and Francis kept his distance. But Sarah's resolve grew stronger. A week later, Reuben announced his decision to finalize the divorce. He invited Sarah's parents and a few close relatives to their home to witness the separation, claiming he wanted everything to be transparent. Sarah's mother, Auntie Rose, called her, pleading for honesty. "Sarah, if there's anything you're hiding, now is the time to confess," Auntie Rose said urgently. "We'll support you, but you need to tell the truth." Sarah's voice remained steady. "I'm not hiding anything, Mama. I promise you." The day of the gathering arrived. The mansion's grand hall was filled with tension as Reuben addressed the assembled guests. "I've loved Sarah for years," he began, his voice laced with bitterness. "But I can't live with a thief, someone who refuses to own up to her mistakes. Today I'm ending this marriage." Sarah remained composed, her gaze unwavering. "Before you make your final decision, Reuben," she said calmly, "I'd like to show everyone something." She walked to the large television mounted on the wall and connected her phone to it. The guests watched in confusion as security footage played on the screen. It showed Reuben entering his study late at night, stumbling and mumbling to himself. The video captured him opening the old trunk and placing the envelope inside before leaving the room. As they were watching the camera footage, the footage review, Francis imitating his father, while he was filling a glass of bottle with wine, and became curious of his father's action. As a matter of that, Francis decided to give a try. Gasps filled the room as the realization dawned on everyone. Reuben's face turned pale as he watched himself on the screen, unable to deny what he was seeing. Sarah turned to him, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You accused me, humiliated me, and almost destroyed this family because of your carelessness. Reuben, this is the truth you've been avoiding." Reuben's initial reaction was one of disbelief. He shook his head, muttering, "No, this can't be. I wouldn't." But the evidence was irrefutable. The room fell silent as Reuben slowly rose from his seat, his expression a mix of shame and regret. Sarah's father, who had been quiet throughout the ordeal, finally spoke. "Reuben, you owe my daughter and grandson an apology. Your actions have been disgraceful." Reuben nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't know what came over me." Francis, who had been watching from the corner of the room, finally stepped forward. "You hurt me, Dad," he said, his voice trembling. "You didn't believe me when I told you the truth." Reuben knelt before his son, tears streaming down his face. "I was wrong, Francis. I let my anger blind me. Can you ever forgive me?" Francis hesitated before nodding slowly. "I'll try, Dad." Sarah, however, wasn't ready to forgive so easily. "It's not just about forgiveness, Reuben. It's about rebuilding trust, something you've shattered." Reuben looked at her, his guilt evident. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, Sarah. Please don't give up on me." Reuben's apology marked the beginning of a new chapter, but the wounds he had inflicted on his family wouldn't heal overnight. Determined to prove his sincerity, Reuben made significant changes to his life. He stopped entertaining his friends who had encouraged his reckless behavior and sought professional help to manage his alcohol dependency. Sarah, though hesitant, allowed him the opportunity to rebuild their relationship. She established clear boundaries, emphasizing that trust would take time to restore. Francis, however, remained distant. The scars of his father's accusations and harsh punishments lingered. Reuben poured his efforts into reconnecting with his son. He spent more time at home, helping Francis with his schoolwork and even joining him in his hobbies. Slowly, Francis began to see the changes in his father. One evening, while watching a movie together, Reuben turned to Francis. "I know I've failed you as a father," he said. "But I want you to know how proud I am of you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for my mistakes." Francis, moved by his father's vulnerability, nodded. "I'll give you a chance, Dad. But you have to keep your promise." Reuben smiled, grateful for the glimmer of hope. The tension in the household gradually eased as Reuben's efforts became evident. He began spending more time with Sarah, acknowledging her sacrifices and showing appreciation for her resilience. They went on dates again, reliving the moments that had once brought them together. Sarah remained cautious, but she couldn't ignore the genuine transformation in Reuben. One day she said to him, "If you're serious about changing, you'll need to address the deeper issues that caused this mess." Reuben agreed and arranged for family counseling sessions. These sessions allowed them to confront their pain and misunderstandings in a safe space. For the first time, Reuben admitted how his success had blinded him to the needs of his family. "I thought money could solve everything," Reuben confessed. "But I see now that I've been chasing the wrong things." Sarah shared her feelings of isolation and hurt. "All I ever wanted was a partner who valued me and our family," she said. Through these sessions, the family began to heal. Reuben's acknowledgement of his failures brought a sense of closure for Sarah and Francis, while their willingness to forgive gave Reuben hope. Months later, the family stood on firmer ground. Reuben had remained consistent in his efforts to rebuild their trust, and his relationship with Sarah and Francis had improved significantly. On a sunny afternoon, Reuben surprised Sarah with a heartfelt gesture. He had planned a renewal of their wedding vows, inviting only close family and friends to celebrate their fresh start. As they stood before a small gathering in the mansion's garden, Reuben took Sarah's hands in his and said, "I've learned the hard way what truly matters. You and Francis are my everything, and I vow to never let my pride or recklessness come between us again." Sarah, tears streaming down her face, responded, "I accept your apology and your promise. Let's build a future founded on love and trust." Francis, standing nearby, clapped enthusiastically. "I'm proud of you both," he said, his smile genuine. The ceremony symbolized not just a new beginning for Reuben and Sarah, but a reminder of the resilience of their family. After everything was solved, Reuben and Sarah sat Francis down, and they both gave him a strong counseling, saying, "Don't ever take such drink again." As the sun set, the family sat together, reflecting on their journey. Reuben turned to Sarah and Francis. "Thank you for giving me another chance. I'll spend every day proving that I deserve it." Sarah smiled, placing her hand over his. We're stronger together, Reuben. Let's make this a fresh start for all of us. The chapter of turmoil had finally closed, giving way to a story of redemption, love, and unity. The lesson was clear. Wealth and success meant nothing without the bonds of family, trust, and mutual respect. If you did enjoy the story, then let's see in the comment section who was wrong, and if you learned something from this story, then hit on the subscribe button for more real-life stories.